The cold breath of autumn followed me into the ballroom, long after the doors closed behind me. It clung to my skin, hiding beneath the borrowed satin of my dress, refusing to let me forget where I'd come from, and how painfully out of place I was. Above me, chandeliers dripped crystals like frozen rain, scattering gold light across polished marble floors. Everywhere I looked, wealth shimmered like a second skin on the people. Inside the Asterian Hotel's grand hall, women in gowns that glittered like starlight. Men in tuxedos, sharp enough to cut through the air itself. Their laughter rang out smooth and confident. The kind of laughter born from generations of knowing they belonged exactly where they stood. And then, there was me, a waitress from the east side with a bank account that hovered just above empty, wearing a midnight blue dress, stitched and altered by an elderly neighbor who insisted every girl deserves at least one night that feels like magic. I pulled the fabric tighter around my waist, praying the seams wouldn't betray me under these lights. I didn't belong here. I could feel it in every breath I took. Still. I wandered farther inside. Clutching a glass of champagne I didn't dare drink, maybe if I held it the right way. No one would notice the slight tremble in my hand. Maybe if I moved carefully enough, I could pass for someone who wasn't counting how many hours she'd need to work to repay Mrs. Wynne for the dry cleaning fee she refused to accept. I told myself I was only here to represent her. She'd been invited to this charity gala every year for decades, but caught a bad cold last night. Go, she'd whispered, pushing the invitation into my palm. You spend too much time worrying about the world. Let the world worry about you for a change. But as I drifted through the golden glow of the ballroom, all I felt was the weight of eyes brushing over me, some dismissive, some curious, some simply indifferent. A girl like me was background noise, in a place like this. Then the atmosphere shifted. It was subtle at first, like a change in pressure before a storm. The kind of instinct you can't name, but you feel, in the bones beneath your skin, a hush. Almost, not in sound, but in attention, as if the particles in the air rearranged themselves around a new center of gravity. I felt it before I saw him. A tingling along the back of my neck, a whisper of warning, a flicker of heat I didn't want to acknowledge. When I finally turned, my gaze collided with his, and the breath I'd been holding slipped from my chest. He stood near a towering arrangement of white orchids, half hidden in the shadows, cast by the chandelier's brightest cascade of light. Tall, perfectly tailored suit cut along the sharp lines of his frame. His hair was dark and swept back with deliberate precision. His jaw strong, clean-shaven, carved like something out of marble and sin. But it was his eyes that froze me where I stood. Eyes that missed nothing. Eyes that didn't look through me like everyone else did. They looked into me deep enough that I felt stripped bare in the middle of the ballroom. And he didn't look away. Not for a second. He stood perfectly still. Yet the room seemed to pulse around him, bending subtly toward his presence. Two men in black suits flanked him, bodyguards. By the way, they carried their hands near their jackets and scanned the room with restless precision. Whoever he wasn't just wealthy. He was powerful, the kind of powerful that didn't need to announce itself. I forced myself to turn away, pretending to admire the champagne fountain. But the warmth on the back of my neck didn't disappear. He was still watching me. I could feel it. I tried to move, to blend back into the crowd. But before I could take even one step, a low voice brushed against my ear, like velvet stretched over steel. You look uncomfortable. I turned and found him standing closer than any stranger should. Up close. He was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, cold beauty, and an aura that made the air thrum. He smelled like expensive cologne cedar. Smoke. Winter wind. His presence wrapped around me. Dangerous and intoxicating at once. I'm fine, I murmured, though my pulse was doing its own frantic dance. I'm just not used to events like this. His lips curved, not a smile, but a quiet acknowledgement. Neither am I. That surprised me. A man like him looked born for this ballroom. He extended a hand. Demian Volkov. The name hit me with a strange chill. I'd heard it before. Whispers. Rumors. The kind people lowered their voices for. Still. I placed my hand in his. Lily. I breathed. Lily heart. His fingers closed around mine, warm. Strong. Completely sure. He didn't shake my hand. He held it. As though testing how I fit in his grasp. You're not on the guest list. He said softly. It wasn't an accusation. It was simply fact. My neighbor was invited. She couldn't come. His eyes softened by a single degree. Ah. Mrs. Vin. He blinked. You know her. I know everyone worth knowing. He replied. Before I could respond. The ballroom's energy shifted again, but this time. Sharply. A group of men entered through the west doors. Their laughter cutting through the polished music. Loud. Careless. Too confident. Damien's entire posture changed, eyes darkening. Jaw tightening. They moved through the crowd like sharks smelling blood. One of them, Marcus Serrano, spotted us. His grin curled into something cruel. As he approached. Well, he drawled. Volkov found himself a new toy. Heat rushed into my cheeks. Shame. Anger. Fear. Sharp and quick. Damien didn't move at first. Not even a breath. But the temperature around us dropped as if the chandeliers had dimmed. Apologized to her. He said quietly. Marcos Norte. Come on. Man. It was a joke. Apologize. Damien repeated. The word a blade, disguised as silk. Everything around us stilled. The crowd sensed the crackling danger. His bodyguards shifted subtly. Hands sliding inside their jackets. Ready? Marco swallowed. Sorry. He muttered. Unable to meet my eyes. The moment he stepped back. Damien's attention returned to me. Just me. As if the room and its dangers didn't exist. Dance with me. He said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a command. It was inevitability. I opened my mouth to protest. To remind him I was no dancer. No socialite. No one who belonged here. But when his hand slipped to the small of my back, something in me yielded. One dance. I told myself. Just one. The orchestra swelled as he led me onto the floor. The room parted around us. Eyes tracking our every step. His hand was firm against my spine. His breath warm near my ear. His gaze locked on mine like a promise. I had no business wanting. You made an enemy tonight. I whispered. His lips brushed the shell of my ear as he answered. He was my enemy long before tonight. We moved in perfect sync. Though I'd never danced a waltz in my life. His body guided mine effortlessly. As though he already knew my rhythm. As the chandeliers spun above us in a whirl of gold and shadow. His grip tightened. Just enough to claim me. In front of the entire room. And I understood without him having to say a word. That stepping into his arms meant stepping into something far more dangerous than a dance. When the music faded. He didn't let go. He leaned in. Voice. Low. Almost reverent. That was the moment you stepped into my world. Lily, even before you knew what that world truly was, the night outside the Asterian Hotel felt colder than before, as if stepping out of that ballroom stripped away the thin layer of borrowed confidence I'd managed to hold together. My breath fogged in the air, curling like a ghost in the glow of the street lamps. I had barely taken 3 steps down the marble staircase, when a shadow moved beside me. Damien. Your ride is here. He said. as if it were the most natural thing in the world for him to anticipate my needs. My direction. My fear. A sleek black car rolled to a stop in front of the entrance. Polished. Silent. Predatory. Much like the man opening the door for me. "I can take a taxi," I murmured, though the words lacked conviction. "Damien didn't argue." He just watched me with those unreadable eyes, dark, steady, unwavering, until my resistance collapsed under the weight of his calm. "Get in." Lily. Soft. But final. I did. "You made an enemy tonight," I whispered. His lips brushed the shell of my ear as he answered. He was my enemy long before tonight. We moved in perfect sync, though I'd never danced a waltz in my life. His body guided mine effortlessly, as though he already knew my rhythm, as the chandeliers spun above us in a whirl of gold and shadow. His grip tightened, just enough to claim me, in front of the entire room. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the engine filled the silence. Then, without looking away from the passing skyline, he asked, "Why were you so nervous tonight?" I swallowed. "Because I'm not used to all of this." All of what his voice was soft curiosity, wrapped in something sharper. "People who live lives like yours." Finally, he turned to me. "And what kind of life do you imagine I live?" I met his gaze. Shallow honesty against deep, dark mystery. "I don't know." Inside, the city lights smeared across the tinted glass, like watercolor streaks, blurring into gold and blue. The leather seats were cool against the back of my legs. I felt small again, just as I had in the ballroom, but in a different way. Not because I didn't belong, but because everything here felt so much larger than me. Damien slid in beside me, leaving just enough space between us to pretend we weren't touching. But the pull, God. The pull was unmistakable. Magnetic. Quiet. Dangerous. The car stopped in front of my building, a weathered brick complex, with a faulty porch light and a stairwell that groaned every time someone climbed it. My world. My reality. Damien stepped out first, offering a hand I shouldn't have taken, but I took it anyway. "Thank you," I whispered. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his knuckles grazing my skin. "Get some rest." Lily Hart. Just my name in his voice sent a tremor through me. And when I turned to go inside, he lingered at the curb until the door closed behind me, as if making sure the night swallowed me safely. Mrs. Wynne was waiting for me the next morning, sitting at her kitchen table with a steaming mug of chamomile tea, her robe wrapped tightly around her, as though the world outside had suddenly grown colder. "How was the gala?" she asked. But her tone wasn't casual. She was watching me, measuring something. "It was unexpected," I said carefully. Her eyes narrowed with a kind of knowing. I didn't understand. Unexpected how I hesitated, then told her everything, except how it felt to dance with him. To be seen by him. To be wanted by him. Some things felt too fragile to speak aloud. When I said his name, Damien Volkov, her expression changed. Subtle, but unmistakably tense. "Lily." Just one word. But heavy. "I need you to listen to me." She set her cup down with trembling fingers. "Damien Volkov is not a man you say no to lightly." My heart stuttered. "You know him." "I knew his father, Sergei Volkov." She exhaled, eyes clouding with memories. Cruel. Powerful. A man who didn't believe in forgiveness or mercy. A chill crawled over my skin. "Damien isn't his father," I protested, though I had no evidence, only instinct. "Maybe not," she said softly. "But men raised in shadows rarely walk in the light." I didn't want to believe her, but I also couldn't unhear her. That afternoon, as sunlight spilled weakly across my apartment floor, My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, dinner. Tonight. I'll send a car. D. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't phrased like an invitation. It was an expectation. Before I could decide what to do, someone knocked on my door. A courier stood outside with a white box tied in emerald ribbon. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, lay a silk gown, the exact shade of deep green I could never afford. There was no note, only the dress. I pressed my fingers to my lips, breath shaking. I shouldn't go. I knew that. But when 6:30 arrived, and the same black car idled outside my building, I found myself walking toward it as if drawn by a gravity I couldn't resist. Damien's world revealed itself the moment the mansion gates opened. Stone pillars. Long lines of manicured hedges trembling in the evening breeze. Modern glass walls, reflecting the last orange streaks of sunset. Soft golden light blooming from within, like embers behind smoke. Men stood at the edges of the property silent, watchful, stationed like sleek shadows. They didn't look at me. They looked through me, assessing threat levels, as if every guest had to be measured for danger. Inside, the house was colder. Not in temperature, but in control. Every breath felt monitored, every step quietly acknowledged. And Damien standing at the far end of the hallway, watching me as though I were the only thing in the room worth noticing, fit the space perfectly. You came, he said. You sent a dress. I replied, trying for teasing but falling short of steady. He stepped closer, gaze travelling over me, not lustful, not crude, but with a kind of intensity that made my pulse flutter. It suits you, he murmured. Then, softer, I don't trust easily, Lily, but I trust what I see in your eyes. And just like that, the ground beneath my feet shifted again. Dinner was nothing like the gala. No noisy, no glitter, no audience, only a table for two beside tall windows, where moonlight slipped in like silver water. Candlelight flickered across crystal glasses, casting little sparks that danced between us. We talked, really talked, about his childhood in Moscow cold winters, a home full of silence, a father whose approval was a myth, about the empire he inherited long before he was ready, about betrayal, how it shapes a man more deeply than ambition ever could. He didn't tell me everything, but he told me enough. And every time he reached across the table, fingertips brushing mine, the back of his hand grazing my wrist, it felt deliberate, claiming, I protect what I want, he said quietly. Eyes locked on mine. And I want you. The world seemed to still at those words. My breath hitched. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. But before I could respond, before I could even process the heat climbing up my neck, his phone rang. The sound sliced through the intimacy like a blade. He answered, in another language, sharp syllables, low voice, tension coiling in every line of his body. When he hung up, his expression had shifted into something darker, colder. I have to go, he said. Business that cannot wait. Something inside me cracked open, with confusion hurt even, though I had no right to feel it. As he walked me to the door, I caught the faintest trace of worry in his eyes. Or maybe regret. The car was waiting. He placed a hand at the small of my back, gentle, possessive, and whispered, Go home, Lily. I'll find you soon. And as the mansion disappeared behind me, I realized I was leaving with more questions than answers. But one truth pulsed loudly in my chest. I wanted him too. More than I should. More than was safe. Rumors travel faster than truth in a city like ours. By morning, they were everywhere, floating through coffee shops, whispered at bus stops, slipping under doors like cold drafts you can't keep out. Marco Serrano had been found near the riverside. Critical condition. Head trauma. Missing hours of memory. I sat frozen at my tiny kitchen table. Half-drained cup of tea cooling between my hands. As the news anchor repeated the story again and again, it felt unreal, like fiction. Like something that happened to people who lived in a different universe. But the universe I used to belong to was shifting beneath my feet. Piece by dangerous piece. Because I knew the timing. I knew exactly when Damien Volkov had vanished from the candlelit dinner table last night. His expression sharpening into something lethal. And now Marco Serrano was fighting for his life. My heart thudded painfully. Not from guilt. Not even from fear. But from a slow, dawning understanding. I was in over my head. Far. Far over. My phone rang. His name didn't appear. But I knew. I felt it in my blood. When I answered, Damien's voice wasn't the quiet, velvety tone he used with me at dinner. This voice was deeper. Rougher, like gravel dragged across stone. Lily. Just my name. But it pulsed with tension. I suppose you've heard. He added. You left the table. I whispered. And hours later, Marco, do not finish that sentence. His words cut through the air. Sharp and decisive. For your sake. Don't. A tremor moved through me. Not because he scared me, but because I understood too much. Even without the details. Silence stretched between us. Thick and taut. Then Damien said something I never expected to hear from him. A warning laced in exhaustion. Regret. And something like protectiveness. My world is not kind. Lily, if you stay near me, you will not be untouched by it. Walk away now. Before you can't walk away at all. Something inside me twisted. Because I already knew the truth. I had crossed that line the night we danced. I took a slow breath. Steadying the storm inside me. I'm still here. Damien. Another long pause. Then. Softer, dangerously, softer. You shouldn't be. The next knock on my door came 90 minutes later. This time. It wasn't a courier. It was Damien himself. He stood in my hallway like he'd stepped from a dream into my crumbling reality. Dark suit. Dark eyes. Rain dripping from his shoulders. Power wrapped around him like a cloak. Only he knew how to wear. Let me in, he said quietly. I moved aside. Heart pounding. He walked into my apartment as though he'd never been in a place so small. So fragile. Everything in the room seemed to shrink around him, from the sagging sofa to the flickering kitchen light. But when he turned to face me, something in his expression had softened. The shadows beneath his eyes. The tightness in his jaw. It wasn't anger. It was something closer to fear. Stay with me, he said. My breath caught. Damien, for a week, he added quickly. Just 1 week. See who I really am. See my world. Then choose. He stepped closer. Voice low and raw. But don't make that choice based on gossip. Or fear. Or the ghosts of my father's sins. Make it based on truth. Mrs. Wynn's words echoed through my mind. Men raised in shadows rarely walk in the light. Marco's voice whispered from memory. He'll ruin you. And still, I wanted to reach for him. Why me, I asked. His eyes held mine. Steady. Unhesitating. Because you don't flinch when you should. Because you look at me like I'm a man. Not a monster. Because you make me want things I stopped believing in. I pressed a hand against my trembling chest. Damien, I'm scared. So am I, he whispered. That admission undid me more than any threat ever could. When his car arrived minutes later, I didn't fight myself anymore. Fear walked beside me. Desire pulled me forward. and I stepped into the car knowing that my life, as I'd known it, was about to be swallowed whole. The week that followed unraveled like a dream, stitched with shadows. Mornings began, with soft sunlight spilling across silk sheets. The warmth of Damien's arm heavy around my waist, as if guarding me, even in sleep. His breathing was steady, a quiet rhythm I found myself matching without meaning to. Other mornings, I woke alone, his side of the bed cool. A sign he'd been called away before dawn. But breakfast always waited for me. Steaming on the terrace overlooking the river. Guarded by one of his men who never spoke, unless spoken to. Days blurred into something unreal. Private museum galleries, where his hand rested at the small of my back. Quiet afternoons in the mansion's library. Sunlight filtering across leather-bound books. The soft murmur of his voice, explaining a painting, a sculpture, a piece of music that shaped him. Evenings were for shadows. Phone calls he took behind closed doors. Arguments in Russian that echoed through the hallways. Men arriving late at night. Faces grim. Voix ushed. Danger lived in those walls, but so did something else. Something unexpected. Gentleness. Damien in the gym. Sweat glistening across scars I'd never seen before. Eyes softening when he caught me watching. Damien brushing a stray curl behind my ear before dinner. Damien standing between me and the world like a shield made of flesh and fury. His men treated me differently now. Not like a stranger. Not like a guest. Like someone important. Someone the boss had chosen. But it wasn't until the fourth night that the truth of his past came to light. A photograph slipped from a drawer while I searched for a pen. Damien, beside a stunning blonde woman whose smile didn't reach her eyes. His former fiancée, she betrayed me. Damien said when he found me holding the picture. No anger, just pain layered beneath exhaustion. She wanted access to my world, to my business, to the power that runs under this city. And when I wouldn't give it, she took what she could and handed it to others. Your enemies, I whispered. Yes. A pause. And my trust has never recovered. I looked at him, then truly looked. He wasn't cold. He was wounded. Not a monster. A man shaped by monsters. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not with fear, but with understanding. And maybe something like love. On the seventh night, the city drowned beneath rain. Water streaked down the mansion windows, in thin silver rivulets. Thunder murmured in the distance. Damien found me in the sitting room, staring out at the storm. You're quiet tonight, he said. I'm thinking. He stepped beside me, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the rain. About leaving, he asked. About choosing. I corrected softly. He closed his eyes. Just for a second, and in that single second, I saw it all. The weight, the fear, the longing he tried so hard to bury. I can face any rival, he murmured. Any threat, any war. But the thought of losing you, his voice trailed off. The silence that followed was fragile. I turned to him, heart bruised and full. I'm choosing you, I whispered, but with my eyes open. I'm not stupid. Damien, I know what your world is. I know the cost. He looked at me, like my words were something holy. But if I stay, I added, we do it my way. Honesty between us. Respect. And no cages. Ever. His breath hitched. Then he stepped closer, lifting my chin with his fingers. His touch careful, almost reverent. Then you are mine, he said. Voice, low. Trembling with emotion he rarely showed. And I am yours. The storm outside deepened, but inside, something quiet and powerful settled between us. We slow danced in the dim light, our bodies close. The only music, the steady echo of raindrops, and the thrum of our hearts, sinking by instinct. His forehead rested against mine. Breath warm, lips brushing the edge of a promise. And in that moment, I knew the truth with terrifying clarity. I should have run from him the night we met. But instead, I fell. And in the fall, I found a love, more dangerous than any enemy, and more powerful than fear itself. And if you enjoyed falling into this dangerous world with me, don't forget to like this video. It tells YouTube you want more stories just like this. If you want to stay close, if you want to hear what happens next in Damien and Lily's world, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another chapter. Share this story with someone who loves dark romance, and let me know in the comments what you think Lily should do next, or which character you want to dive deeper into. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for being here.